Picture this. You're at a baseball game with your kid. You know, the excitement, the hot dogs, the roar of the crowd.
Yeah.
Now imagine that joy completely shattered. Instead of cheering, you're facing a whole different opponent. The justice system.
And the stakes are unbelievably high.
Your life.
Exactly. It's that stark contrast that we're diving into today. Two stories. Seemingly unconnected, separated by time and geography, but both raising these huge questions about issues that affect us all.
We're to start in Montreal, December 6th, 1989.
Mm.
An ordinary day at École Polytechnique, students rush into class, end of semester, buzz in the air.
Right, like any other day.
But this day, it ends in unimaginable tragedy. We're looking at some chilling sources here. An episode of The Fifth Estate, the book Because They Were Women, the Montreal Massacre, and articles from the Montreal Gazette, and they all paint this vivid picture of the horror that unfolded.
And it's not just the violence itself, it's the motivation behind it. This 25-year-old man, driven by a hatred of women, walks into the school with a semi-automatic rifle targeting female students specifically.
He separates the men from the women in a classroom. And he declares, "I hate feminists."
Dylan.
Before opening fire, he murders 6 women.
6. Each one with their own hopes and dreams.
Ellen. She had multiple job offers waiting for her. Natalie, planning a vacation. Anne-Marie, with her band Barbara, working on her final project. Annie, about to have a job interview. And Sonia, dreaming of returning to her hometown.
It's so important to remember their individual stories, the magnitude of the loss. This wasn't just a mass shooting. This was a targeted attack on women, an act of gender-based violence that sent shockwaves through Canada and the world.
And the violence didn't stop there. The gunman continued his rampage through the school. He targeted women in the cafeteria, where Barbara Klusmik-Vidovich was murdered right in front of her husband.
We also learn about Maurice Lyer. He tried to lock a door to protect others. He was shot and killed, a true hero.
2 other women, Anne-Marie Edward and Genevieve Bergeron. They were found hiding in a storage room, but they too lost their lives.
And finally, in room 311, 4 more women were murdered. Again, we see their individuality, Marlaire. The rebellious one, Annie Turcotte, known for her generosity, Maud Haviernick, the artist, and Michelle Richard, the calming presence. Then the gunman turned the gun on himself.
The Fifth Estate episode. It really details the aftermath, the agonizing wait for news as families clung to hope. Imagine the horror of police spokesperson Pierre Leclerc discovering his own daughter Maurice among the victims.
I can't even imagine the depth of that grief.
It's just a stark reminder of the lasting scars that violence leaves behind, not just on individuals, but on entire communities.
Absolutely. And it forces us to ask, how do we even begin to heal from such a profound loss?
The Montreal Massacre. It became a turning point, a catalyst for change. It forced a national conversation about sexism and violence against women, a reckoning that was long overdue.
Yeah, it really brought these issues to the forefront.
Research centers, foundations, parliamentary panels, all dedicated to understanding and addressing the root causes of violence against women.
It sparked a global movement, too, leading to the UN Declaration on Violence Against Women in 1993 and the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women.
It also ignited a push for gun control in Canada. Stronger background checks, mandatory safety training, firearm registration.
All in an effort to prevent another tragedy like this.
But the debate over gun control continues, just like it does in the United States. There's this constant back and forth between those advocating for stricter regulations and those worried about their rights.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Organizations like the December 6th Victims Foundation Against Violence and the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, they're vital reminders of the importance of this struggle.
They keep the victims' memories alive and ensure that the fight for a safer society continues.
Now let's shift gears completely, from the halls of academia to the bright lights of Dodger Stadium.
Okay, a completely different setting.
We're moving on to the story of Juan Catalan, a man wrongly accused of murder facing the death penalty.
And the most unbelievable part.
What ultimately saved him? An episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
It's like something out of a movie, the world of comedy colliding with the criminal justice system.
Our main source for this is the documentary Long Shot. It tells Juan's incredible story and the role that this TV show played in his case. It highlights just how flawed our justice system can be and the power of sheer luck.
Right place, right time. Sometimes that's all it takes.
It all started with a knock on the door, a police unit known as the Death Squad. They were there to arrest Juan Catalan right in front of his family.
Talk about a terrifying situation. Just imagine the fear.
To understand how he ended up in this predicament, though, we need to rewind a bit. Juan was a hardworking family man, a devoted Dodgers fan, living a normal life in L.A.
Seems like a regular guy.
But his brother Mario, he got involved with gangs and was facing a murder charge.
Okay, so there's some family history there.
To protect his father, Juan took the blame for a marijuana possession charge,
Oh, wow. That's a tough situation.
a decision that would come back to haunt him. And then tragedy struck. A key witness in Mario's case, 16-year-old Martha Puebla. She was murdered, and the police, convinced that Juan was involved, they made him their prime suspect.
So they focus on him based on his brother's case.
They relied heavily on eyewitness testimony, which we know was notoriously unreliable. They even manipulated a photo lineup to make sure witnesses identified Juan.
That's really concerning. It raises a huge issue about the weight given to eyewitness testimony, especially when there's not much other evidence.
It's a problem that's led to countless wrongful convictions, especially among people of color.
Exactly. It's a systemic issue.
And in the Juan's case, it almost cost him his life. They denied his request for a lie detector test. They seemed determined to make him fit their narrative regardless of the truth.
It sounds like they had their minds made up.
But thankfully for Juan, fate intervened.
How so?
While he was in jail facing a possible death sentence, his girlfriend Alma had a light bulb moment.
Okay, what was it?
She remembered that on the night of the murder, Juan was at a Dodgers game with her and their daughter. It was a Mother's Day gift.
Oh, wow. So he had an alibi.
And not just any Dodgers game. It was a particularly memorable one for Juan. It was a nail-biter tied at the top of the ninth inning before the Braves pulled ahead.
So it's stuck in his mind.
She frantically searched for the tickets, desperate for any proof that Juan was where he said he was.
That must have been agonizing, searching for that one piece of evidence.
And thankfully, she found them. But would it be enough?
That's the question.
Being a die-hard Dodgers fan, Juan remembered that game vividly. And there was another detail. He remembered a film crew shooting in the stadium that night, in his section.
Okay, what were they filming?
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
No way. Seriously.
He specifically remembered seeing Bob Einstein filming scenes in the stands.
Wow, that's quite a coincidence.
His lawyer, Todd Melnick,
Yeah.
a man who refused to give up. He saw the potential of this information and started digging.
That's the kind of lawyer you want in your corner, someone who's going to fight for you.
It's worth noting that Todd's dedication and his resources probably saved Juan's life. A public defender might not have had the time or ability to follow this lead.
It really highlights the inequalities in the justice system.
But back to the story. Todd contacted the Dodgers, and after some digging, they confirmed that there was a production filming that night. And guess what? Bob Einstein was there.
I bet he wasn't playing Super Dave, though.
You got it. He was playing Marty Funkhauser in Curb Your Enthusiasm alongside Larry David.
What are the chances?
And get this. The scenes they were filming were in Juan's section of the stadium.
That's incredible.
The documentary shows footage of Juan and his daughter walking into the frame during one of the scenes. You can see their faces clearly. It's amazing.
That's incredible proof right there on camera.
Even the Curb Your Enthusiasm crew was stunned. Larry David said, "I'll be damned."
That's gotta be one of the most unexpected things ever. A comedy show providing evidence in a murder case.
To solidify Juan's alibi, they found that when he was leaving the stadium, he called Alma, and the call pinged a cell phone tower near Dodger Stadium at 10:11 p.m.
So there's no way he could have been at the murder scene.
It's like the universe was on his side.
It really does seem that way.
So we left off with Juan facing a murder charge and a possible death sentence. Even with this rock-solid alibi, he was up against a system that seemed determined to put him away.
It's a reminder that evidence doesn't always guarantee justice.
Right. And in Juan's case, he was going up against a prosecutor nicknamed the Sniper, known for winning every single murder case she tried.
Talk about an uphill battle.
It was like David versus Goliath Juan and his lawyer Todd, facing these impossible odds.
So what happened? Did the Curb Your Enthusiasm footage save him?
Armed with that footage and the cell phone records, Todd went head-to-head with the Sniper during the preliminary hearing.
That must have been intense.
And you know what? He completely dismantled her case.
Wow, what a victory.
The courtroom erupted in applause when the judge dismissed the case. Can you imagine that relief? The joy, the feeling of vindication?
It's hard to even fathom after everything he went through.
It's a powerful moment in the documentary. We can't help but feel happy for Juan and his family.
Absolutely. But amidst all that celebration, there's still a tragedy at the heart of this story.
You're right. Martha Puebla's murder remains unsolved.
And what's even more troubling is that the documentary suggests the police might have been able to prevent her death if they hadn't been so focused on Juan.
That's a tough pill to swallow. They ignored crucial evidence. like a recorded jailhouse phone call where one of Juan's brother's co-defendants ordered the hit on Martha.
Because they thought she was an eyewitness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they even went so far as to falsely claim that Martha had identified her killer in a photo lineup.
That's incredibly disturbing. Those actions directly contributed to Martha's death.
It raises serious questions about police conduct and accountability.
It's a reminder that while we celebrate Juan's freedom, we can't forget the systemic issues that led to his wrongful conviction and the loss of an innocent life.
And as if the ordeal of being wrongly accused and imprisoned wasn't enough, Juan's story takes another crazy turn. Even after being exonerated, the LA County prosecutor refused to drop the drug charge against him, the one he took to protect his father.
Are you serious? Even after they knew he was innocent of murder?
It's mind-boggling. They were willing to punish him for something he didn't do, even after admitting he was innocent in the murder case.
That's a clear example of prosecutorial misconduct. They were more concerned with getting a conviction than with justice.
It speaks to a disturbing pattern, this win-at-all-costs mentality.
And unfortunately, it's not that uncommon. We've seen it time and time again.
In the end, the prosecutor only agreed to settle when Juan agreed to spend 2 more weeks in jail.
That's outrageous. They were holding his freedom hostage.
It's a perfect example of the power imbalance in the justice system. Prosecutors have so much power, and individuals, even those proven innocent, often have very little recourse.
It's a system that needs serious reform.
Juan eventually sued the city of Los Angeles and received a $320,000 settlement.
But no amount of money can compensate for what he went through.
You're right. But there is a silver lining to this story. Juan and his lawyer, Todd, they formed a deep bond through this shared experience, and they remain close friends to this day.
That's heartwarming to hear. At least something good came out of this whole mess.
And they often go to Dodger games together. Now they're greeted with cheers from fans who know their story.
It's like they've reclaimed that space. The Dodger game went from a source of trauma to a symbol of hope and justice.
Juan's story, with its crazy Hollywood twist, it shines a light on a much bigger issue: the prevalence of wrongful convictions and the need for serious criminal justice reform.
Absolutely. It exposes the flaws in relying solely on eyewitness testimony, the importance of good legal representation, and the need for greater accountability within the system.
Now let's zoom out a bit and consider the societal responses to both the Montreal Massacre and Juan Catalan's wrongful conviction. How did these events spark change? What lessons can we learn?
Both tragedies, despite being so different, they show us just how fragile justice can be and how important it is to always question assumptions.
The Montreal Massacre forced Canada to confront the reality of gender-based violence. It shattered the illusion that these things only happen somewhere else.
It was a wake-up call.
And the response was significant. Research centers dedicated to studying violence against women were established. They provide data analysis and evidence-based strategies for prevention and intervention.
So they're tackling the problem from multiple angles.
The families and friends of the victims, they founded the December 6th Victims Foundation Against Violence. They became powerful advocates for change.
Driven by their grief and a desire to prevent future tragedies.
And the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, it's a reminder of the human cost of this tragedy and a call to action to end violence against women.
It keeps the conversation going, which is so important.
But the fight isn't over. The debate over gun control in Canada, just like in the U.S., it's still raging.
It's a complex issue with strong arguments on both sides.
And that's where the Montreal Massacre serves as a stark reminder. The victims' families. They've spoken out passionately about the need for stricter gun laws. They argue that their loved ones might still be alive if the perpetrator hadn't had such easy access to a firearm.
Their voices need to be heard. They bring the human element to this debate.
They remind us that these aren't just political arguments. They're about real lives lost and the need to prevent future tragedies.
Now, shifting to Juan Catalan's case, it exposed the flaws of our justice system and the impact of wrongful convictions.
It showed the dangers of relying solely on eyewitness testimony, especially when it's coerced or manipulated.
And it highlighted the inequalities in the system. Those with resources and good lawyers have a much better chance of getting justice.
It's a reminder that for every one Catalan who is exonerated, there are countless others who remain unjustly imprisoned, their stories untold, their pleas for justice ignored.
It's a sobering thought.
And that's where media attention and public advocacy are crucial. The documentary Long Shot, it brought Juan's story to a wider audience. It sparked outrage and calls for reform.
It showed the power of storytelling and how media can hold those in power accountable.
But it also makes you wonder, how many other innocent people are in prison right now, their stories untold, their pleas for justice ignored.
It's a question we should all be asking.
It's a call to action, to support organizations fighting for criminal justice reform, to advocate for the wrongfully convicted, and to demand a system that prioritizes fairness over conviction rates.
We can't be complacent. We need to keep fighting for justice.
Now let's dive a little deeper into the theme of trauma. It's something that runs through both of these stories.
Trauma leaves a lasting impact, both on individuals and on society.
The Montreal Massacre shook Canada to its core. It forced a national reckoning with gender-based violence and the systems that allow it to continue.
It challenged long-held beliefs and attitudes.
And the trauma of that event, it continues to resonate today, shaping policies and conversations about women's safety and equality.
And for Juan Catalan, the trauma of wrongful imprisonment, the constant fear, the separation from loved ones, it will likely stay with him forever.
His story reminds us that the wounds of injustice run deep and healing takes time.
But amidst all the pain and suffering, there are glimmers of hope.
The survivors of the Montreal Massacre and the families of the victims, they found strength in activism, working to prevent future tragedies and create a more just society.
Turning their pain into purpose.
And Juan Catalan, despite everything he went through, he emerged with a renewed appreciation for life and a determination to fight for others who have been wrongly accused.
It's inspiring to see that kind of resilience.
Their stories show the incredible capacity of the human spirit to overcome adversity, to find meaning in suffering, and to use their experiences to advocate for change.
Now, before we wrap up this part, I want to pose a question to our listeners.
Go ahead.
What are your thoughts on forgiveness? Can we or should we forgive those who have committed terrible acts or perpetuated injustice?
That's a deep question. It gets to the core of human nature and our capacity for compassion.
For many people, forgiveness is seen as a crucial part of healing and moving forward.
It can be a way to let go of anger and resentment and find peace.
But it's important to remember that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or condoning what happened.
Right. It's about acknowledging the harm, holding the person accountable, and moving forward without being consumed by anger and hatred.
It's about finding a way to coexist with the pain.
But forgiveness isn't always possible, and it's not always the right choice. For some people, the wounds are too deep, the pain is too raw.
And in some cases, forgiveness might feel like a betrayal of the victims or a way of minimizing the harm they suffered.
Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to forgive is a deeply personal one.
It's based on individual experiences, beliefs, and values.
And it's a decision that deserves respect, no matter where someone falls on that spectrum.
We'll explore this more in the next segment, the complexities of forgiveness and accountability.
Stay with us. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive. You know, as we wrap up this episode, I keep coming back to the theme of memory.
It's something that connects both of these stories in a powerful way.
It shapes how we understand the past, informs our present, and guides our future. And it's through memory that we honor victims, hold perpetrators accountable, and hopefully learn from our mistakes.
Absolutely. It's crucial.
Let's go back to the Montreal Massacre for a moment. The families and friends of those victims, they've worked so hard to make sure their loved ones aren't forgotten.
It's a testament to their love and dedication.
They've created memorials, scholarships, foundations, all in their names, keeping their memories alive and making sure their stories continue to inspire action.
It's about keeping that flame burning brightly.
And the December 6th Victims Foundation Against Violence, they played a huge role in preserving the memory of the massacre and pushing for change.
They've been a driving force.
And that annual National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, it's a powerful collective act of remembrance, a reminder that these women were not just statistics.
It's a day to reflect, to honor, and to recommit to ending gender-based violence.
But memory isn't just about the past, right? It's about how we carry those memories forward, how they shape our understanding of the present, and how they guide our actions.
Exactly. It's about learning and growing.
For the survivors of the Montreal Massacre, the memory of that day, it's a constant presence. It shapes their lives and informs their activism.
I can only imagine the weight of that memory.
Their willingness to speak out, to share their stories, to raise awareness and advocate for change, that takes incredible courage.
It's truly inspiring.
Their resilience is a testament to the power of memory to transform pain into purpose.
It's about finding meaning in the midst of tragedy.
Now let's think about Juan Catalan's story for a second. It shows us how memory can be fallible and the danger of relying solely on eyewitness accounts.
It's a stark reminder that our memories aren't always perfect.
His case highlights the need to understand how memory works, how easily it can be influenced by stress, trauma, and suggestion.
All these factors can distort our recollections.
It's a wake-up call that our memories aren't always reliable, and we need to be careful about the weight we give them, especially in legal proceedings.
Especially when someone's life is on the line.
But here's the thing. Juan's story also shows how memory can be a tool for exonerating the innocent. His memory of that Dodger game, a seemingly small detail, became the key to his freedom.
It's amazing how those little details can make such a huge difference.
It reminds us that even the most ordinary memories can have incredible power, and we should never underestimate the importance of preserving them.
We talked about forgiveness earlier. It's such a complex issue, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Can we or should we forgive those who've committed horrific acts or perpetuated injustice?
It's a question that goes to the heart of who we are as human beings, our capacity for compassion and understanding.
It's a difficult conversation to have.
For many, forgiveness is a crucial part of healing and moving on. It's a way to let go of anger and resentment and find some inner peace.
It's about releasing yourself from the burden of those negative emotions.
But it's so important to emphasize that forgiving someone doesn't mean forgetting what they did or condoning their actions.
Yeah, exactly. Forgiveness doesn't equal acceptance.
It's about acknowledging the harm, holding the person accountable, and finding a way to move forward without being consumed by hatred and anger.
It's a long and difficult process.
But we also have to recognize that forgiveness isn't always possible, and it's not always the right choice. For some, the wounds are just too deep, the pain too raw to even think about forgiving.
And that's perfectly okay. There's no right, wrong answer when it comes to forgiveness.
And sometimes forgiveness might feel like a betrayal of the victims, or a way of minimizing the harm they've suffered.
It's a delicate balance.
In the end, the decision of whether or not to forgive, it's a deeply personal one. It's guided by individual experiences, beliefs, and values.
And we need to respect that decision, no matter what someone chooses.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this lingering thought. In a world bombarded with information, how do we make sure stories like these, with their crucial lessons, don't fade away?
It's a challenge we all face. How do we keep these tragedies from becoming just another headline?
Memory isn't a passive thing. It's an active choice, a conscious effort to remember, to learn, and to act.
It's about making a commitment to keep these stories alive.
We have a responsibility to share these stories, to use them as fuel for our ongoing fight for justice and equality.
It's about honoring the victims and learning from the past.
So let's all make a commitment to be active participants in the process of remembrance.
Let's keep these conversations going.
Let's honor the victims by carrying their stories forward, learning from what happened, and working towards a world where these horrors are never repeated.
A world where justice prevails.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep seeking the truth.
And until next time, stay safe and remember the fight for justice. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.